This week, Fred VanVleet of the Toronto Raptors went off on the officiating, and one official in particular who looks like he has, you know, a problem with Fred VanVleet because he's called him on a bunch of things. The NBA has had its issues with officiating. It had an official who they booted out because he gambled on games, and as a result, manipulated the outcome as best he could on games.
That's a long time ago, though.
Doesn't matter. In a sport like the NBA where officiating is the way it is.
What was his name, by the way?
Tim Donaghy. Yeah.
Tim Donaghy. That's right.
Downey, yeah. Whatever. Well, first of all, tell me what you think about what Fred said.
Well, so we're on Sirius, right? So I can't curse, which I would love to in this.
No, don't curse.
Don't curse.
We get letters.
I'll say, yeah, I loved it. I bleep and loved it. I think I give Fred a lot of credit because Fred knew he was going to get fined. By the way, so this is a total aside, but if you are a Raptor, should you be fined in Canadian dollars or U.S. dollars if you do this?
You get paid in American dollars. They fine in American dollars.
Okay, great. You know what, John? Actually, check mark. You passed your log exam. That's a fair answer. I think they were honestly frustrated. You saw the Denver game, and I thought the refs were terrible in that. And then obviously you have the Clippers game, and I think I just think we're dealing with a team that was frustrated the fact that they should have won against the best team in the West. They lost. They had lost 2 in a row. I think Fred and the rest of the team's frustrated. Someone asked a pretty innocuous question. I think it was my colleague at The Athletic, Eric Corrine, and Fred just went off. So, he was basically, in some ways, this was planned. I think he just wanted to talk about it and get it out there. I think honestly, he has a valid case. I'm not saying that I don't believe the refs are, they're not on the take. It's not a Tim Donaghy situation, but I do think it's human nature. If you don't particularly like a certain guy, like on that court, you may be quicker to give him a tee or give him a foul. I do believe that. I think refs are human. I think some teams probably get more calls in favor than not. And again, I think it's human nature. I do respect that the game is hard to call, but I think this year, at least as a pretty big NBA watcher, Bob and John, I think the refs have had a bad year, and I'm not a ref basher by nature. I just think they've had a bad year. My larger question, and then I'll cede it to you guys, is has the game just gotten too fast, too big? And are these guys just too athletic where it's just too hard to call accurately? Because on every play, in some way,
officials?
No, but I'm just saying, like, you do wonder if that, like, some of it is like, it's just they're so physical and they're so muscular and they're so athletic that, like, it just becomes such a hard game to call. But you know what, leagues want to protect this stuff because this is like the third rail from them. If fans ever believe things are not on the up and up, they're not going to watch. So I get the fining and stuff, but I like when players are just honest and like let the fans inside know that, like, you know what, like, this crew has sucked for us, and like somebody should say it. So I'm a big Fred guy, and I was happy to see it, but it's not my 30,000, right? So it's easy for me to say.
Well, you've lived in Canada now long enough that you will understand.
5 years, yeah.
You will understand this. The Canadians have this inherent belief in sports against any U.S. team in any sport, that a Canadian team will get the short end of the stick.
It's so silly.
Whether it's the Blue Jays or the Raptors or the Leafs playing in the U.S., like, a Canadian team is going to get the short end of the stick because the officials, generally speaking, are American. In the NBA, I think maybe not all, but the vast majority are American. Do you think there's truth in that?
No, I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. To be on the court and thinking, oh man, I was born in St. Louis. Let me call a foul on Scotty Barnes, who, by the way, isn't Canadian. He just happens to play for a Canadian team. I will find one of the things I always loved when we were on the air together at Sportsnet was how many fans were so upset, Bob and John, about like the Raptors like not being on the Christmas Day game or not getting the Martin Luther Day game. So like if there was some big conspiracy, there was never a conspiracy. You're in a different country, so the advertising rates do not reflect. You're not helped by that because networks are making money off whatever the viewership is. And
sure, so a decision in that regard is made because
finance, commerce has nothing to do with
they're
Toronto.
a Canadian team. You don't think that officials take the same position?
No,
not at
Listen,
all.
if we went to the other 29 markets and we transposed Freddie's words into every starting point guard on that team, everybody'd say, yeah, that's right. I guarantee this is the toughest sport to officiate of the four sports in North America because of some of the stuff you talked about, Richard, with the size of the players, and the differing size of the players. I mean, when you think that Freddie can go against Joel Embiid and Embiid just hits him with an elbow and Freddie can go down and it's not a foul because it's just size versus size. Yeah. And these guys are in an impossible situation. NBA,
and it's fast. It's the fastest.
It's faster than ever before. Scoring
but there's this
ever before. I mean, even guys on other leagues have agreed with Freddie. Marcus Smart's agreed with Freddie. I mean, this is such a localized issue that it becomes a national problem.
The one thing I do want to say though is, and Fred was, I don't know if he hit on this, but this was the game before. I do think that what is frustrating as a fan, and I think it's totally legit, is when the referees sort of take the game into their own hands, and that is what I thought Scott Foster did with Scotty Barnes. And like there are times,
but we don't know what Scotty Barnes said.
But
we
John,
do not know what Scotty Barnes said.
I guess, but they're like one of the jobs of a ref is not to determine outcome, and that call determines outcome. So short of Scotty Barnes just F-bombing to death the referee,
right?
You have to be smart. To me, like as a ref, you have to not give in on that. That's time and place and score. By the way, that's a different argument to me than like, the play in the Super Bowl where is it a penalty or is it not a penalty? It is. Like you got to call the penalty whether it's the end of the game or not. But but technical foul is different on a technical foul where the referees determine that he's calling it.
But we also
what you said.
We also don't know, and I'm not defending Scott Foster for one bit. I'm not. But we also don't know what Scotty Barnes said to him 2 quarters before. We don't know. We don't know the evolution of the conversation.
But that's not supposed to weigh in though. He could have. Again, to me, this is where all three of us will be subjective.
Scott Foster says,
go ahead.
If he says to him at the end of the quarter, if you talk to me one more time, I'm throwing you out. You do not talk to me one more time. And then Scotty mouths off. He's been warned. And that's the magic. That's the magic of basketball.
But if he says something is innocuous, so you missed the call there, Scott. That's a bad call. You should get run on that.
I don't think it was that innocuous.
I think from what I read, it was something to the effect of we got cheated there. Something to that effect. I don't even know if he MF'd them.
I think there were a few expletives in there too, Richard.
I just Scott Foster. Yeah, Scott Foster is always
too sensitive.
Yeah, he is famous as a ref for like getting involved in outcomes. He's a frustrating, in my opinion, referee. But the Fred thing was, Fred thing's different. Like that's,
Well, Freddie was
Fred was specific.
Specific. Has had 6 technicals this year.
Whatever it is.
5 of them, 5 of the 6 have been the same referee.
It's interesting in that I think one outcome that Fred probably did not think will happen on this is I think you're going to see a lot of the stat and analytics heads in the NBA start to keep track of what NBA crews call techs on players. And that's be an interesting stat to see.
Like how many?
Like if there's another Fred VanVleet situation where like, just make this up, like Giannis, like of his 7 techs, it's like 6 of them are the same crew. That would be interesting to me as a fan just to like want to know.